Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode number 3 of Talk Bolts to Me. Thank you all so much for coming back. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. For those of you that don't know, today's episode, we're going to get into the second quarter of the Chargers 2021 season. So games 5 through 8, which was actually weeks 5 through 9 because their bye week was in there. Last episode, we talked about the first quarter, games 1 through 4, my thoughts on it, just overall thoughts on it. Got into each game specifically, what went right, what went wrong, just some stats to look at to kind of keep track of for the entire season. I'm doing this because obviously I just started this podcast. This is only episode number 3. Just started this podcast last month, so I wasn't able to kind of give my reactions to the games last season. So it's kind of the reason of as to why I'm doing this, kind of breaking down the entire season. Now, before we get into that, I would like to talk about the news that happened with the Chargers this week. Was their contract extension with Mike Williams. Okay, so the franchise tag deadline was March 8th. If you didn't franchise tag these free agents, then they would become free agents and they would be able to sign with whatever team they wanted. So whatever team offered them the most money, whatever team they wanted to go to. So I think it was really, really important the Chargers got this done. They came out a day or two before and basically said, Mike Williams is going to be a Charger. Either we're going to franchise him or we're going to get a long-term deal with him. And fortunately enough, they were able to get a long-term deal with Mike Williams, which I think is really, really important. I think I talked about this in my first episode, but we'll talk about it again here just in case some of you are new and didn't listen to the first episode. But, my opinion of Mike Williams changed over the course of the year. Basically, for the majority of the year, I was kind of like, no, they can let him walk. They're going to have to pay him a good chunk of money. They have a lot of money tied up in Keenan Allen at the receiver position. They don't need to sign Mike Williams. They can find someone else to kind of take his role and take over his spot. And then, near the end of the season, I kind of realized how important Mike Williams is to this team. And what really convinced me and kind of pushed me over the top was that last game against the Raiders where when it was crunch time in the fourth quarter and the Chargers needed to convert they needed to make a comeback and they needed to convert all these fourth downs, these huge throws, Herbert was looking for Mike Williams. Every play, it seemed like he was looking for Mike Williams to make a big play, to bail him out. And so I think that just finally convinced me of just how important Mike Williams is to this offense. Obviously he had his best year. He had his best year of his career last year. He had 1,150 yards, I think 10 touchdowns. Let me just double check that. Yeah, he had 9 touchdowns last year, 15.1 yards per reception. He was just clutch. I know he seemed inconsistent, especially if you're familiar, if you guys are fantasy players, you kind of feel it that way. Obviously, fantasy football is very different from real football, but it did seem like he was inconsistent. He had some games where he kind of didn't make as much of an impact, but there were other games where he just kind of took over and dominated. I think about the first Kansas City game, the Cleveland game, the Cincinnati game, obviously the last Raiders game were games where he dominated. He was maybe the best player, non-quarterback on the field. So I know some of you may be thinking, they paid too much for him, and that contract is $20 million a year. 3 years, $60 million seems crazy, right? For a wide receiver, that puts him near the top of wide receivers. But you got a couple things you got to keep in mind is the cap increases every year. It seems like, except for last year after the COVID year it went down, but the salary cap increases almost every year. So $20 million in 2022 is very different from $20 million in 2017. You got to look at the cap and what percentage of the cap that Mike Williams is taking up. It's actually, I think, a pretty good contract for both Mike Williams and the Chargers. It's only 3 years, right? Mike Williams is 27 years old. Not sure when he turns. I think he turns 28 either before or during the season. But so it's 3 years. By the time the contract's done, he will be 30 years old. Right? Wide receivers, typically that 29 years old, 30-year-old age mark kind of starts the decline for them a bit. So he'll be 30 at the end of the contract. then the Chargers can decide if they want to re-sign him or let him walk, depending on where they're at, as a team, so where they're at salary cap wise. Things are just going to be so different in 3 years. Impossible to predict. Good for Mike Williams as well, because if he just balls out for these 3 years, he's going to get another big contract, right? So he gets 2 big contracts basically if he plays well for this next 3 years while being the 7th overall pick. So good for both teams. Not a huge cap hit this year. This year's only a $14 million cap hit, which is nice. Next year in 2023, it's $19 million. And then basically, if they won, they have an out, right? Their potential out for this contract is after 2 years, because they can decide to, that third year of the contract is a $27 million cap hit, which is a huge cap hit. So depending on where the Chargers are, how Mike Williams plays, they have a potential out after the 2023 season, before the 2024 season. They would only have $7 million in dead cap, which is really not that much. So I think overall it's a great contract. Mike Williams is super important. The Chargers are at a point, they were 9-8 last year, on the brink of the playoffs. You have your quarterback on a cheap deal. You have pieces on this team. Now's the time to not be taking away and letting go good to great players on your roster that are contributing to your success, right? You're not that far away. This team's not that far away. So I think it's time that they keep these players and that they add to this roster, okay? We can't just be letting go huge parts of your offense and arguably, your best receiver. So they drafted Palmer last year, and maybe he'll develop into something, but they needed Mike Williams. One thing I like to always look at or compare Mike Williams to is, now I'm not comparing him to this player, but is Davante Adams. I think obviously a lot of people, we have short memories in the NFL, and a lot of people know that Davante Adams has been like the best wide receiver in football, definitely the last 2 years, over the last 2 years. Obviously Cooper Kupp had a better season last year, but if you take into account 2020, 2021, I think most people say Davante Adams has been the best receiver in football, and maybe since 2018. 2018, he kind of exploded on the field. So since 2018, and including all 4 of those years, maybe Davante Adams has been the best receiver in football. But many people forget Davante Adams was a rookie in 2014, right? He's just played his 8th season. His first 2 years, he wasn't necessarily. I don't want to say he wasn't good, because the team was different. I believe they still had Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb on the team, and those were the 2 alphas on the team. But his first 2 years, he wasn't Davante Adams that we know him now. He had basically averaged 450 yards and 2 touchdowns those 2 years. So he was a minor part of that offense. And even his third year, he took a step. He had almost 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. His 4th year, he had 885 yards and 10 touchdowns. So those 2 years are definitely good years of contributing and being an important part of the offense. But it wasn't until his 5th year where he really exploded into this is the best receiver in football potentially. Okay, his 5th year in 2018, he had almost 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns, and he became the Davante Adams that we know of now. Okay, definitely had 2 good years before that, but they weren't top receiver in the NFL potentially. So I like to look at that as, I think we're a little spoiled or we're a little tainted when we think of players like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase coming in and putting up 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns their rookie year, and just thinking every receiver needs to be this way. And it's just not like that. People will develop. Well, people are in different situations on their team and who their quarterback is and the philosophy of their offense and how they use them. And sometimes it just takes players it takes them a while to develop and turn into the players that they'll eventually become. And maybe that's the case with Mike Williams. Is we're kind of, last year we kind of just saw the potential of what he could be in that, the next 3-4 years, from 2021 to 2025, he's going to take that maybe Davante Adams step. Now, I don't think he's going to put up those type of numbers, just because the nature of how the team is built. But I do think, we could see more productive years out of Mike Williams. And just my final thought on all of this is I think it's really, really important in today's NFL, and I think teams are starting to realize this, is that you need weapons. It's one of the most important things in the NFL now. It used to be like you need a defense, a defensive line, a defense that just suffocates them. And then, you need an offensive line. If you don't have a great offensive line, you're never going to go anywhere. And, not saying that those things aren't important anymore, but it's kind of morphing more into like, we need weapons. And really good weapons on your team can make up for other deficiencies. If your best players are your quarterback and your receivers and tight ends and running backs, it can really make up for a lot of other flaws that you have, right? And we just saw it last year with the Bengals. The Bengals offensive line was not good. And if you went by the old mantra of, you need a good offensive line to make it, or you're not going to be successful, the Bengals kind of, proved that that's not necessarily true. And the Browns, vice versa. They had probably the best offensive line in the NFL last year, the last couple years. Colts have a really, really good offensive line. Neither of those teams made the playoffs. So it's like, again, I've always say this, there's no one formula into success, and there's no one way to win. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but I really do think that having weapons for your team and for your quarterback is extremely, extremely important. I mean, look at the Chiefs. They have 2 stud weapons that they go to, in Kelsey and Hill. And they have other guys too that can make plays. Look at the Rams winning the Super Bowl last year. They have Beckham, and they have Kupp, and they have Van Jefferson. They have some good running backs, a decent tight end, and they brought on Beckham before they lost Robert Woods. So they were adding Beckham to their team, even though they had Kupp, Robert Woods, Van Jefferson, Higbee, Henderson, Michelle. They knew how important to have weapons are. And you just look at these teams, and the Bills, and they have Diggs and Davis and Sanders and Beasley, and so obviously the Bengals with Chase and Boyd and Higgins and Mixon. So it's just really important. So I think you definitely need Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and I wouldn't be surprised if they either spend on bringing another receiver in, or even if they draft one pretty high in the first or second round, and I wouldn't be upset with it really. So my overall thoughts on the Mike Williams signing. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. You can definitely disagree with me. I love, again, debating and talking about sports. So yeah, let me know. Okay, so getting into the main part of this video, this podcast is getting into the second quarter of the Chargers 2021 season. So that is weeks 5 through 9, and that's games 5 through 8. Okay, they had their bye week during this quarter, so that's why it's weeks 5 through 9. Like I said last episode, we went over the first quarter, and that was the most successful quarter of the season for the Chargers in terms of win percentage. They went 3-1, and no other quarter of the season did they have, I think, 3 wins, more than 3 wins, or more than 2 wins. So they were 3-1. They had just gone to Kansas City and beaten the Chiefs, and then they beat the undefeated Raiders at home. So I think we were all feeling pretty good about the team. Could have easily been 4-0 with that Cowboys loss. I think Chargers kind of outplayed them near the end and definitely could have won that game. So they could be 4-0. That's kind of what we're all thinking. First place division. Yeah, so that's kind of how the first quarter ended, and then on to the second quarter. In the first game, game 5, week 5 of the second quarter was the Browns game. So this was a pretty exciting game, probably one of the most exciting games of the year. Chargers had a lot of exciting games that I can think of. The Browns, the Steelers, the second Chiefs game, the first Chiefs game, obviously the last Raiders game. A lot of exciting games. This Browns game was really exciting. It's just offensive explosion. Herbert went off. Keenan Allen had a good game. Herbert, I think, had 5 total touchdowns, 4 passing, 1 rushing. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams both had good games. Eckler had over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was just an explosion, okay? So yeah, let's get into that game a little bit. Chargers offensively started off with a bad drive, 3 and out. Browns looked pretty unstoppable in the beginning of the game. In the beginning of this game, the Browns were just moving the ball on the Chargers. They scored on their first 2 drives, field goal on the first drive, a touchdown touchdown on the second drive, and it wasn't looking good in the beginning. Okay, but fortunately, Chargers offensively were keeping up with them. Yeah, so they went 3 and out their first drive, but then their next 2 drives were touchdown drives. Yeah, their second drive was a little more of like a move the ball down the field, no big plays, threw short, ran the ball well, and it ended with a Parham nice catch and run to go up 7-3 on the Browns. Okay, then the Browns get the ball back. Like I said, they moved the ball pretty easily against the Chargers, score a touchdown. Browns are kind of Chargers kryptonite, a team that's really good at running the ball, and a team that actually runs the ball majority of the time. A lot of teams in the NFL now, they aren't running the ball majority of the time, but the Browns are. They commit to that run like the Titans, and even if they're down by a couple possessions, they're going to run the ball, and that's kind of the Chargers' kryptonite in the 2021 season. Like I said, the Chargers scored a touchdown in their second drive. Their third drive was a bomb, 72-yard bomb to Mike Williams. So Chargers are up at this point 14-10. And they're looking good offensively, but defensively, unfortunately, they're kind of getting moved on. Okay, so at this point, again, the Chargers are up 14-10. Browns get the ball back, and again, they just move the ball down the field. They get a big play hitting Donovan Peoples-Jones. Can't really blame the corner. He made an aggressive play, which led to the big play, but sometimes you got to take those chances, and sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. Chargers were pretty lucky to not allow any points on this drive because so the Browns ended their drive with a turnover on downs, but Odell Beckham dropped an easy pass that would have kept the drive going. That would have definitely led to at least a field goal, but maybe a touchdown. So after 3 drives for both teams, Chargers are up 14-10. Okay, and then comes the Chargers basically get 2 more possessions in the first half, and one is a punt, and the other one is a fumble. Okay, it's basically they have a 3-and-out punt. Bad drive. They gave up a sack, and then the next play is a Eckler fumbles on the first play. So those are their last 2 drives. They have 5 total drives in the first half, 2 touchdowns, 2 punts, and a fumble. Okay, so they're looking okay. I mean, you would have hoped for at least 17 points on the 5 drives, but now the Browns have 2 more possessions. We already talked about their first 3. They had a field goal, touchdown, turnover on downs. They get 2 more possessions and they score on both. Okay. Their fourth drive, they just again move the ball down the field. They're looking unstoppable. Even on their turnover on downs drive, they looked unstoppable, and they're just running the ball, throwing it well, get a touchdown, and they go up 17-14 at this point. And then their last drive of the half comes off the Eckler fumble, and it's actually probably the Chargers' best defensive stand. Okay, because they start off with a short field. They start on the Browns start on the Chargers' 22-yard line, but they end up with only a field goal. Okay, so halftime score looks to be 20-14, and the Browns are basically looking unstoppable. Chargers' offense looks okay, but they've had a couple bad drives and a couple really good drives, so a little inconsistent. Overall, the first half is, the big thing is defense looks terrible, and you're going to see in the second half that the Chargers make decisions based on a lot on how the game is going, but also how the game went in the first half. They're going to have to be a little more aggressive, which they do, and it's a big reason why they end up winning the game. Spoilers. So Browns get the ball to start the second half, and it looks exactly like basically every other drive that they've had. They just gash the Chargers, a 5-play drive, 75 yards, touchdown, and they go up now. I believe it's 27-14 at this point. Chargers are looking terrible on defense. Okay, Browns have had 6 drives, all 6 of them. 5 of the 6 they've scored. The one they didn't score, they still moved the ball 63 yards and should have had points if it weren't for a drop pass. So things are looking pretty bleak. You're down 2 possessions now, and your defense hasn't stopped anything. And so you're going to see how this basically affects the Chargers' decision-making and how they play the rest of the game in their first drive of the second half. So first drive of the second half, it ends in a touchdown for the Chargers. Okay, it's a really long, nice drive. It's 14 plays. It's 84 yards. It takes up almost 6 minutes on the clock. Okay, so now the 3 Chargers scoring drives are all touchdowns, and they're all over 80 yards. But it was really interesting to look at this drive again and then how the Chargers got there. Because I think it was a really good example of Staley, the head coach, not getting enough credit for the aggressiveness that he had in certain games that basically were the reason, not the reason, but were a huge reason why the Chargers ended up winning those games. I think a lot of people are looking at the second Chiefs game or the Raiders game, the last Raiders game of the year, and they're like, Staley making these decisions, just going for it on fourth down, and it's the reason why we lost, not kicking field goals. But they don't look back at the beginning of the year or middle of the year of these decisions and the reason why, they were a big reason why we won the first Chiefs game and why we won this Browns game was Staley's aggressiveness. So again, he's not a madman. I mentioned that before. There's kind of a method to his madness of when he goes for it on fourth down. So Chargers come out. Browns just scored again on the opening drive. Okay. Again, they've scored in 5 of their 6 possessions and they've looked good in all of their, even the possession they didn't score, they looked good in. And so the Chargers are down 27-14. Now, when you think about this, when you think about, okay, we're down 2 possessions, and they're actually down 14 points. I think I said they were down 13 points, but they missed an extra point. They're down 27-13 at this point. So again, you have the ball, you're down 2 possessions. The way you think about this game is, okay, if we score on this drive, we're only down 1 possession. We only need to stop the Browns once in order to tie the game. We need to stop them once. We need to keep pace with them, obviously. We need to score on the majority of our drives, but we also only need to stop them once because we have the ball now. Down 2 possessions, we score, we're down 1. Next Brown possessions, we stop them, we get the ball, we score, we're tied. That's the ideal world, right? If everything goes perfect. The point is you really need to score on this drive because if you don't score, you kick the ball, punt the ball back to the Browns. Well, now the Browns have the ball. They're up 2 possessions. You have to stop them twice, right? You have to stop them twice in order to tie the game up. And that's a lot harder than stopping them once while simultaneously scoring every time for yourself, your team. So basically what they do, it's 4th and 2. And the Chargers are on their own 24-yard line, right? They punt the ball back to the Browns. Again, that situation plays out. Now you have to stop them twice. Chargers haven't stopped them all day. They've scored 17 straight points. They're up by 14 points. Okay. So they go for it. 4th and 2 on their own 24-yard line. And a lot of people are like, that's like a death sentence, right? Well, to me, it's a death sentence to punt the ball back to to the Browns at this point. Browns, even if they score a field goal, right? Even if they score a field goal, they're up 3 possessions. They're up 3 possessions in a game you haven't stopped them all game. What's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? You're most likely going to lose this. Next, anyways, they convert that. They move the ball down the field. Then they come to a 4th and 7 on the Browns' 22-yard line. Okay. Now 4th and 2. Again, we talked about average yards per play is over 4 yards. You should get 2 yards more often than not. 4th and 7 is a different story. 7 yards is a lot more difficult. Okay. So to me, this is a lot riskier call. They could take the 3 points, right? But they're still down 2 possessions. So meaning they kick, kick a field goal, down by 11. The score's 27-16. They still have to. They kick the ball back to the Browns. They still have to stop them twice. So to me, it's kind of one of those like you have to go for it. Anyways, they convert that 4th and 7, and they score a touchdown. Herbert runs it in. And they go for 2, get it. So now the Chargers are down. So now it is 21. Okay, Chargers are down by 6 points. So of course they're in that situation now where they only need to stop the Browns once, and then they can either tie or take the lead because they're only down by 6. So Chargers defense decides to finally show up for the first time in the game, and the Browns' next 2 drives, their 7th and 8th drive, they force punts. Chargers force punts on the Browns, okay, which is great. Exactly what they needed, okay? They needed at least a couple of those to get back in the game, okay? Unfortunately for the Chargers, after their opening second half drive of a touchdown, 14 plays, 84 yards. They punt the ball. Pressure kind of ruins that drive. But like I said, Browns punt on their next 2 possessions, so the Chargers get the ball back. And they basically start the first of 4 straight touchdown drives. So the offense gets really, really hot. And this is the drive that started it. One of the better drives of the game. They hit Mike Williams on another bomb, 42 yards. Just really, really good play calling to get him. He was wide open, to get him wide open. So after that play, it's Chargers take the lead by 1. It's 28-27. We're in the fourth quarter now, and there is, I believe, about 11 and a half minutes in the fourth quarter left at this point in the game. Okay, so Browns get the ball back. They hit Njoku on a huge play, 71-yard touchdown. It was just a bad tackle attempt by Adderley. Browns go for 2. They go up by 7. So now it's 35-28. Okay, Chargers get the ball back. And like I said before, they have 4 straight touchdown drives. First one was the bomb to Mike Williams. Next one, they score on a Eckler touchdown. This was a longer drive. It was 11 plays, 75 yards, but it was probably the best drive of the game. You know, it wasn't a 50-yard bomb like 2 of the other drives, but you're not going to realistically get that every drive. Of course, you want that. Those are exciting 50-yard bombs. You score in 1 minute or on 1 play or on 2 plays or 3 plays. But this drive was more of a realistic drive of what you can do, what you can sustain. Okay, there was 11 plays, 75 yards, just a really good mix of runs, short, pushing the ball 10, 15 yards down the field, and they were super aggressive as well, again, which they kind of had to. Situation right now is Browns are up 7 points, okay? There's 9-10 left in the game. Browns have scored, at this point, they have scored for 6 of their 9 possessions, and one of those other non-scoring drives, they looked really good, so Chargers haven't looked very good on defense. They had those 2 drives back-to-back where they forced them to punt, but then the Browns scored a touchdown. So this is your situation. Browns can easily, they're the type of team that can control the clock and just do these long, 6-7 minute drives. They already have two drives over 6 minutes in this game. So the Chargers play the game aggressively, basically saying we need to score. If we don't score and we punt the ball back, we lose. That's kind of what they're thinking. So they go for it on a 4th and 4 from their own 41. And I agree with it, because even if you kick the ball back and even if the Browns get a field goal, they go up by 10 with probably 5 minutes left. So you're just in a bad situation there. Anyways, they obviously get the 4th and 4. They also go for it on 4th and 8 on the Browns 25. Kind of the same situation as before. You kick a field goal, you go down by 4, right? But all the Browns need to do is basically, you can make an argument to kick a field goal in that situation, especially because it's 4th and 8, but I like the aggressiveness by Staley, thinking we're not going to stop this team, so let's get that touchdown. They get the touchdown, they tie it at 35. So then the Browns get the ball back with about 7.5 minutes left, and they move the ball down the field like they've been doing all game. Yeah, they get gashed. They move it with ease. Browns 5 plays, 75 yards, and they score a touchdown, and they go up 42-35 at this point, right? To me, this was like a perfect justification of why you need to play aggressively, and why you need to go for it in these situations in the game, and why you need to not kick field goals and go for touchdowns, because you get that field goal. Well, if the Browns come out and do this, they're up 11. Now you're down 2 possessions with, 5 minutes or less left. And so it's just a perfect justification to me of why you play aggressively and why Staley's aggressive play calling helped win them the game. Okay. So again, at this point, there is just under 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Chargers are down. Okay. And they have another touchdown drive, their 3rd straight in a row. 6 plays, 75 yards, okay? They have a nice completion to Keenan Allen where Herbert rolls out and just throws it over the defender, and sideline catch by Keenan Allen. Just the plays that, if you're going to win these types of games, you need to make these kind of plays, okay? They end up scoring a touchdown with a nice little screen pass to Eckler. And so the Chargers kick the extra point, but they miss it. And it seems like a backbreaker. It seems perfect situation of that's going to lose us the game. So I believe it's 42-41 Browns at this point, and there's like 3 minutes left, and you're just thinking, man, they haven't stopped them all game. Browns can just burn this clock out and win. It's kind of backbreaking when you miss that extra point. But fortunately, Chargers do a great job. They force a 3-and-out, and they force the Browns to punt. Weirdly enough, the missed extra point made the Browns go conservative, I think. They ran it on 1st and 10. They tried to throw it on 2nd down, which is not conservative, but they tried to throw it on 2nd down, incomplete. And then they ran it on 3rd and 10, basically like giving up. Either they thought they can catch the Chargers by surprise and run for it on 1st down, but it's pretty risky. And to me, it's more of just like, well, we're going to run the ball. We're going to leave the Chargers like just over 2 minutes left, and expect them to see if they can score. And to me, like, one, the extra point made the Browns go conservative, which kind of helped the Chargers out. And it's just a really good like juxtaposition of Staley versus Stefanski, or Staley versus any conservative coach, most coaches in the NFL, and definitely coaches that the Chargers have had in their history, of just like, I know for a fact, even with the 1-point lead, Staley would have been aggressive in that situation. He would have been throwing the ball on 3rd and 10, trying to get a 1st down. Because, again, switch perspectives. Look at it from the Browns' point of view. Yeah, you're up 1 point, but you're going to kick the ball. You're basically giving it up this drive by running it on 3rd and 10. You're kicking the ball back to the Chargers, who are going to have pretty good field position because you're on your own 14-yard line or something. You're kicking the ball back to them, and they've just scored 3 straight touchdowns. Their offense, our offense, the Chargers' offense looks unstoppable. You got to play like, if we give this ball back to the other team, they're going to score. And Staley plays that way, and I like it. And the Browns didn't. And they kicked the ball back to the Chargers with over 2 minutes left. And the Chargers have a really nice drive where they burn all the Browns' timeouts and they score a touchdown. Yeah. They actually didn't want to score the touchdown, which I don't know if they learned from the Chiefs game, where they kind of scored a touchdown when they didn't need to and gave the Chiefs a chance to tie it. But Heckler didn't want to score, but the Browns pushed him in. Kind of a smart play by the Browns. But anyways, they go up, and Chargers score. They're up 5 points. I think they missed the 2-point conversion. They go up 5 points with 1:31. Browns have no timeouts. Basically go into desperation mode, and that's how the Chargers want to play. Yeah. They want you to try and pass on them and be in desperation mode, and the Chargers defense is supposed to be built for that. So Chargers win, of course. Really, really exciting game. Defense was probably the worst game that they could possibly play, and they still won. Okay, which means that this offense is legit, and the defense really only needs to play average. If they just play average more often than not, and the offense is going to be good enough to win them the game. Okay, great game offensively. One of the higher ADOTs for Herbert, and I talked about ADOTs a lot. I'm going to talk about ADOT a lot. It's average depth of target, so it's basically, are you throwing it down the field or are you throwing little dink and dunk passes? And I think with Herbert and the receivers we have in Herbert's arm, so far, in my opinion, our best games offensively have come when they're throwing the ball down the field, okay? So they threw the ball a lot down the field this game. They had an ADOT of 9.3. And like I said to you guys before, if you finish the year with like an 8.5 ADOT, you're going to be in that top 10 to 12 quarterback range. So 9.3, you're going to be in the upper echelon, potentially, top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Obviously, this is just one game. 4th highest ADOT of the season, and it's the highest to date. Okay, the highest in their first 5 games, and their offense looked the best. So maybe that's a coincidence, maybe not. Something we're going to keep an eye on, and I don't think it's a coincidence, but obviously some people do, and there's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say. But yeah, great game, exciting game. Their aggressiveness helped them win the game, and I thought it was a really good comparison at the end of the game of the Browns being super conservative, being up 1, running the ball, basically trying to burn timeouts or clock, okay? Herbert was under pressure about the normal rate, 25% of his dropbacks. And again, I told you guys, if you're pressured on about 25% of your dropbacks, that's not enough to say like, oh, their pressure was the reason why we lost this game. It's when it starts getting in the 30s, is when you start saying, oh, they had a huge impact. So yeah, at this point, Chargers are now 4-1 after 5 games, and this is when they started getting the love as like, are the Chargers the best team in the AFC or the best team in football? And we'll see how that plays out for the next 3 games of the second quarter. So like I said before, all week and the media and all the hype is Chargers. They beat the Chiefs in Kansas City and they look good doing it. They beat the Raiders at home, who were undefeated, and now they beat the Browns, who at that point in the year, and maybe you guys remember in the preseason beginning of the year, Browns were a big pick on potentially, one of the better teams in the AFC Championship game, maybe Super Bowl. They kind of had the roster. They had the running backs. They had some weapons on offense. They had the offensive line, kind of stacked the defense. So the Browns were kind of looked upon as one of the better teams in the AFC. And at that point, they were. They were 3-1, just like the Chargers. So it was a big win for the Chargers, definitely. And I felt it like they were one of the better teams in the AFC. They're being talked about it all week leading up to the Ravens game. And of course, as we know, they ended up playing the Ravens. And this game was one of the more embarrassing games of the year. Not the most embarrassing in my opinion, but one of the more embarrassing. And they just literally got straight up. I can't really explain what Herbert just looked off. The Ravens just kicked their ass. That's it. The offense looked absolutely terrible the entire game. Absolutely terrible. Their first 3 drives. Actually, their first drive, they had 9 plays, 33 yards, and they punted. That was probably maybe their best drive of the game, sadly. That was it. I know they punted. They didn't score on that drive. But, that drive probably was the best looking drive. That or another drive that ended in a punt was maybe their best drive of the game. But their first three drives was punt, punt, punt. Yeah, with a total of 39 net yards. So, looking really bad. Yeah. Ravens offense comes out hot. They just basically move the ball down the field. They don't necessarily do anything special, but they just move the ball and they score touchdowns on their 2 first drives. So not only are the Chargers looking terrible on their first 3 drives, but they are looking terrible on defense, and the Ravens are just looking great on offense, right? So the Ravens are up 14-0. Chargers' 4th possession. Again, Herbert just seems off, and how the game's going. How the offense started with 3 straight punts, how the Ravens scored 2 touchdowns in their first 2 drives. That's how the game's going at the time. The Chargers go for it on 4th down, 4th and 3 on their own 39. Again, there's reasoning behind it. Yeah, in-game situation. Look at who you're playing. Look at how the game started. Your offense has done nothing. You're down 14-0. You got to do something. Yeah, and they ended up turning the ball over on downs. So now their first 4 drives is punt, 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 turnover on downs. So Ravens look pretty good. Ravens end up scoring a field goal after their Chargers turnover on downs. And actually, the Chargers have actually looked better on defense after the first 2 drives for the Ravens. So the Ravens' 3rd drive, they forced a punt, and then they forced a field goal, but the Ravens got the ball on the Chargers' 39-yard line. So that was a good defensive stand. And then actually the next 2 Ravens drives is an interception and a punt. So basically Ravens get touchdown, but then they have 4 straight drives where the Chargers defense look pretty good. They go punt, field goal because they start on a short field, interception, punt. Okay, but unfortunately for the Chargers, they just can't get anything done. Like I said, they started off punt, 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 turnover on downs. Their next drive is an interception. Okay, they do manage to score a touchdown before the end of the half, and the Ravens don't get any more points at the end of the half. So Chargers missed the extra point. So actually, somehow after the first half, even though the offense has looked absolutely like dog shit, they're only down 11 points. They're down 17-6. And you think, they could still win. Okay, but yeah, offense looks terrible in the first half. Nothing downfield. Everything's short. Not finding success in running the ball. Defense gave them a chance. They had 4 straight good defensive stands, that the Chargers could have easily gotten back into this game, maybe even taken the lead had they taken advantage of that on offense. But second half, again, not much to talk about. Chargers do absolutely nothing on offense. They go turnover on downs, punt, turnover on downs. So they do nothing. Yeah, they can't go for it. They actually go for it on 4th and 1 on their own 19. So again, controversial call, but it's actually maybe the first time I disagree with that call, because It was their first possession of the third. Yeah, and I know the Ravens scored a touchdown to go up 24-6, but I don't know, going for it and not making it basically seals the game because the Ravens are going to get some points, but I understand why they went for it. I just maybe slightly disagree with it because the Chargers did have 4 straight drives where they showed that they could potentially stop them. But anyways, Chargers do nothing on offense. Ravens come out, first 3 possessions in the second half, touchdown, field goal, touchdown. Again, just my overall thoughts, it was just an ugly game. Herbert looked off, could have been the Ravens defense. Obviously they had something to do with it. Wasn't the worst loss of the year because the Ravens at that point were also, I think they were 4-1 and they were considered one of the best teams in the NFL. And this was before everyone started getting hurt. And I think people forget that. Like, I know the Ravens didn't make the playoffs, but they had so many injuries. And Lamar, the first 5-6 weeks, it was like Lamar's MVP, Ravens are best team in football. So to me, it wasn't the worst loss. That's for future Texans, for future losses. But yeah, offense was just absolutely dog shit. Defense actually gave them a chance. Ravens had 11 drives, and the defense, one of them was just the end of the game drive. But so they basically had 10 drives, and I think the defense looked good on 6 of those drives. Punt, interception, that's 4. And then there was 2 field goal drives where the Ravens started on the Chargers 39. Ravens got 5 yards, forced a field goal, and they started on the Chargers 18, and they actually had minus yards and forced a field goal. So there was 6 of the 10 drives. I thought the Chargers defense looked really good. And so I think they gave the team a chance to win, but offense did nothing to help them. So again, don't want to spend too much time on this game. It was just absolutely terrible. So now you're 4-2 coming off that high of the Browns win and of 3 straight wins. And now you're like, dang, was that a bump in the road or what? So, like I said, they're 4-2. They're going into the bye week, so not a bad time for the bye week, I guess, like right around mid-season or just before mid-season. And then they play the Patriots in week 8. Yeah, at home, coming off the bye. So I'll just start by saying, to me, this was definitely one of the more disappointing losses. Definitely more disappointed in this loss than I was the Ravens loss. And, just the fact that I think, and even though the Patriots made the playoffs this year, I think the Chargers were a much better team than the Patriots this year. And at the time of playing, they were coming off a bye. The Patriots traveled to the West Coast and, rookie quarterback. And I just felt really disappointed by this loss. And it was just some inconsistencies on offense. And anyways, we'll get into it. I will mention before I start, this was the first game that Andre Roberts was picked up. And I thought this was a super underrated underrated pickup or acquisition during the year. Before this, they were having it was a mix of Adderley, of KJ Hill, and Larry Roundtree returning kicks, and they were not good. There was no really good returns. A lot of iffy returns that were just kind of a mistake, and I felt like they shouldn't have taken the ball out. So as soon as Andre Roberts was added to the team, their kickoff returns and punt returns were so much better, and he actually made a difference. I think he led the league in kickoff return yardage, and he was up there in average and something like 32 yards a kickoff return, which is great. I think it's very underrated, the special teams return game and starting field position, and if you're able to get a guy who can consistently put you at the 30, even just at the 30 or 35 yard line, that's fantastic. It goes so far, right? Then all you need, if you start at the 35, for example, instead of the 25, right? Just getting 15 yards puts you at midfield. So it's just huge and underrated, and I really like the Andre Roberts pickup, and it made a huge difference on this team. Chargers come out. Their offense looks good. The team overall, offensively, they looked pretty good. They score 2 touchdowns in their first 3 drives. They have their first drive to open the game is an 8-play, 75-yard drive. And it was just a really good drive, a good mix of plays, runs. And when I say good mix of plays, they were throwing short passes, they were running the ball well, they were pushing the ball down the field. They were doing all of it, which is when I really think the Chargers are at their best, Of course, I always talk about the ADOT and average depth of target, but that doesn't mean I don't think all they should do is throw 10, 15 plus yards down the field. I I think mixing it up, keeping the defense on their toes. When they play an offense, and a lot of it could be the defenses, of course, that they're facing, but when they play an offense that is just short passes, it doesn't seem efficient, and they don't do well. So this was a great drive. They actually went for it on 4th and 1. They were on New England's 7-yard line, and they went for it on 4th and 1. I like these aggressive calls, especially in the beginning, early in the game. They don't seem as like detrimental if you miss them. And 1 yard, again, when your average yard per play is like 4 point something, 4.3 yards, you should be able to get 1 yard. That's just the facts, right? And they get it, and they scored a touchdown, so they look great. And like I said, they score 2 touchdowns on their first 3 drives. Their second drive, they actually have to punt the ball. A lot of pressure. This whole game, there's a lot of pressure in this game, especially near the end of the game. But yeah, New England put a lot of pressure on Herbert this game, and that kind of killed the second drive. But the third drive, they had a long run by Justin Jackson. I think it was maybe the longest run of the year. That kind of set up the touchdown. It was a 5-play, 86-yard drive with like a 60-yard run or something. So looking good. They have 14 points in their first 3 drives, which is, you're never going to complain about that. Patriots also score on their first drive, and you're going to hear this kind of all game. They do what the Patriots do. Yeah. The defense isn't really that bad. It's just they give up a penalty. They give up a big play to Aguilar. But the Patriots just kind of do what the Patriots do in these little short passes and these runs, and they just move the ball down the field, these 10 plays, 75 yards. But then their next 2 drives, the Chargers force them to punt, and they get a turnover on downs. Yeah. Patriots on their third drive do move the ball quite well, but the Chargers stop them on goal line, and they force a turnover on downs. Okay. So at this point, both teams have had 3 drives. And the Chargers are winning 14-7. So we're into the second quarter, and from basically their 4th possession, which is about 8.5 minutes left in the second quarter, basically to the end of the game, their offense looks bad, really, really bad. To end the half, after scoring 2 touchdowns in their first 3 drives, to end the half, they go punt, interception, and then they have the ball. They just take a knee to end the half. But punt, interception is their next 3 drives. They just couldn't get anything going. They just getting a lot of pressure on Herbert, the Patriots were, and Mike Williams did drop a potential first down, and Herbert threw an interception, and late in the first half, which set up New England for a field goal. It wasn't really Herbert's fault. It kind of went off of Eckler's hands, and maybe it was slightly high, but Eckler should have caught it, and usually catches it, and it led to an interception. And the Patriots, again, don't do anything that special, right? They get the nice touchdown drive, their first drive, and then they punt it, turnover on downs, then they get the field goal, okay, because they have a short field, and then they punt it, and then they get another field goal because they have the short field after the interception. So, they don't look that impressive. They have 6 drives, and I'd say they have one of those 6 is an impressive drive, maybe 2, because the turnover on downs, they do push the ball down the field 75 yards. But yeah, not that impressive, and we're looking at a 14-13 game going into the half, right? It's one of those games where it's like, man, it feels like the Chargers should be up a little bit more, at least by 4-7 points, but they're up by 1 point. Patriots are kind of hanging around, and this is the game the Patriots want to play, and these are the games that they end up winning, because what you want to do with a team like the Patriots, and with a rookie quarterback, especially, we're talking in the first half of the season, 6-7 games in, you want to take them out of their game. You want to force Mac Jones to have to throw the ball, and with only being down by 1 point, the Patriots can still play their game and run the ball. So that's kind of the first half, in my opinion. Just let them hang around. Chargers offense is too inconsistent again. They were after that offensive explosion with the Browns, just too inconsistent. Kind of like they were in the Cowboys game, maybe even a little bit in the Raiders game. I didn't even think their offense was that impressive in the Chiefs game. It's just been inconsistent, non-existent in the Ravens game. game, inconsistent in this game. So defense hasn't played too bad. Held them to 2 field goals, held the Patriots to 2 field goals, even though they started in Chargers side of the field. So that's my first half thoughts. So yeah, the second half starts, and I wish I could say that the Chargers offense kind of got their shit together and started looking like how they did in the very beginning of the game, but they didn't, unfortunately. Patriots defense is a really good defense, by the way, and obviously Bill Belichick has been coaching for longer than our head coach has been alive, and knows how to call defenses, and his defenses are always good. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but anyway, so Patriots get the ball first possession. They do what they do, they move the ball 50 yards. Chargers do force a fumble, which is nice. They prevent them from scoring, so they're still up 14-13 at this point. Chargers first possession is just a bad one. They have to punt the ball, don't move it anywhere. Kind of wish they would at least put some pressure on the Patriots. You score a touchdown on them, you get an 8-point lead, and you want to get the Patriots, like I said, out of their normal typical game of managing it and short passes and running the ball, but they don't. Chargers never really put that much pressure on the Patriots, never being up by more than 2 possessions. So Chargers punt the ball back to the Patriots, and again, Patriots do what they do. They do start in favorable field position, and just so you guys know, when I say favorable field position, I mean anywhere from starting from your own 40-yard line to anywhere on the opponent's side of the field. Like that's to me is really good field position start. Yeah, Patriots start on basically their own 40-yard line. They move the ball, not very well necessarily. 10 plays, 31 yards. Boom, kick a field goal. They're up 16. What are they up? 16 to 14 at this point, I believe. So Patriots are up, and Chargers' next drive is actually their best looking drive since the very early beginning of the second quarter. Basically, they move the ball pretty well. I guess they go 45 yards. They do end up a 4th and 4 on New England's 30, and they don't go for it. So again, is Staley a madman like everyone says? No, I think there's a method to the madness, and the game situation is Patriots haven't necessarily looked that good on offense or looked that explosive. Chargers haven't been down on this side of the field that often, so this seems like it's going to come down to a field goal kind of game, and that's kind of the feel of it. So they end up kicking the field goal and scoring, and they go up 17-16. Yeah, so next Patriots drive, Chargers 3 and out, force them to punt. So now it's looking like, okay, if the Chargers can score here, they're going to look really, really good, right? It's early fourth quarter. I think there's about 13 and a half minutes. They're up by 1. They get a touchdown. They go up by 8. They're looking good, So Chargers get the ball, and unfortunately, they throw a pick 6. Not sure what happened exactly. There was some kind of miscommunication between Cook and Herbert. I don't know if Cook ran the wrong route, kind of turned around as the ball was almost going past him in the air. Chargers get a pick 6. Patriots go up 24-17. Yeah. So now in a game where Chargers have struggled on offense, they've had 1 good drive since the beginning of the second quarter. It's not looking good. Being down by a touchdown. Obviously, Chargers get the ball back and they go 3 and out. They punt it. So drop passes. It's not looking good at this point. There's about 9 minutes left when New England gets the ball, and New England just does what they do all game. They just move the ball down the field, and they take almost 7 minutes off the clock, move the ball 54 yards down the field, kick a field goal to go up by 10 points, right? And so it's basically over at this point. Chargers have the ball with over 2 minutes left, but they down by 2 possessions, so they do end up scoring. They actually start throwing the ball down the field, and they end up scoring. Maybe it was because the Patriots are playing a bit of a prevent defense, but I just, this game, overall thoughts are just, Herbert looked off again like he did in the Ravens game, and that led to the offense just being way too inconsistent. New England didn't really do anything special. They kept it close, had some nice looking drives, but they didn't do much the defense played well enough against the Patriots offense to keep them in the game, and the Chargers probably should have won the game. Defense only gave up 20 points, and I would say that New England's offense, impressive drives, had two impressive drives. A 10-play, 75-yard touchdown drive. I should say 2 impressive scoring drives. So, when teams start on the other opponent's territory, side of the field, and even if they get a touchdown out of it, or if they get a field goal out of it, if you start start off in field goal range and you only get a field goal, I don't consider that an impressive drive. Okay, so two of New England's field goals came when they started in Chargers territory. Another one came when they started on 40. I don't consider those impressive drives. So to me, they had two impressive scoring drives. Their first drive, which was 10 plays, 7 touchdown, and then the field goal drive that kind of iced the game, which was 14 plays, 54 yards, and a field goal. So defense didn't play that bad. Yeah. Herbert had a pretty good ADOT. A lot of that came late when they just had to throw the ball down the field. But pressure was obviously huge in this game. I think it was 41% that Herbert was under pressure, and that's bad. When 40% of your dropbacks you're under pressure, you're gonna probably lose unless you run some kind of offense that counters it. But they didn't. So really disappointing loss in my opinion. And at this point, we're all kind of thinking, Chargers are 4-3 now. Started off 4-1, lost 2 in a row. Looked terrible against the Ravens. To me, should have won this game coming off a bye, being at home against a lesser Patriots team, a good Patriots team, but Chargers were better in my opinion, and they lost. So now we're 4-3 going into week 9 and going into game. So game 8, week 9 is against the Eagles. Actually, it's at Philadelphia. It's the third East Coast trip for the Chargers already this season. Out of 3 of their 8 games have been to the East Coast. So kind of a brutal start in terms of the travel, but this was one of my favorite Chargers wins. It wasn't necessarily the most impressive in terms of the score or blowing them out or most exciting, but it was a really important win. It was kind of a turning point in their season. If they lose this game, the Chargers are 4-4, right? 4-4, already had their bye week. So, and you have a tough schedule. You still have to play the Broncos twice, the Chiefs again, the Raiders again. You still have to play the Bengals, the Steelers, the Vikings. All these teams are average, above average, good teams, right? So really important win, I think, for the Chargers, and one of my favorite because Philly was a good team. They made the playoffs, of course. They weren't necessarily world beaters. They were 9-8, but I think they were a little better than their 9-8 record. And this was the time of the year where they were just starting to come into their own in terms of, all right, we're a running team. We need to run the ball, and they started to run the ball, and obviously that's the Chargers' weakness, right? So, anyways, good game, good win by the Chargers. Kind of a strange game. There was only 15 possessions in the entire game, which is not a lot. There were 7. The Eagles had 7 possessions. Chargers had 8, and one of the Chargers' 8 was just end of the first half, 1 play possession. So really, they both teams had 7 possessions each. So not going to be necessarily. It's not going to be that high scoring when there's both teams only have 7 possessions, and there also means there's a lot of long drives for each team. Eagles had 4.5 minute, a 7 minute, 5.5 minute drive. Chargers had a 7 minute drive, a 4.5 minute drive, a 6.5 minute drive, and a 6 minute drive. So yeah, the first half for the Chargers wasn't necessarily that good. They had their first drive. They came out and the Eagles started off with the ball. They drove the ball to midfield. Chargers forced them, stalled their drive, forced them to punt. It was a good punt by the Eagles, landed on the 2-yard line, I believe, or the 1-yard line maybe, and Chargers had to start on the 1-yard line. Yeah, probably their most impressive drive of the game was this drive, even though it resulted in a turnover on downs. They drove the ball 98 yards to the Eagles' 1-yard line, but they couldn't punch it in. They went for it on 4th down. Another sign of aggressiveness early on in the game, just like against the Patriots, going for it on 4th down when you can make a chip shot field goal. But I like these calls. Again, your team should be able to get 1 yard, right? Worked against the Patriots, didn't work out with the Eagles. Turnover on downs, Eagles start on their own 1. Chargers do a good job at not letting them move the ball at all. Eagles have to punt, and so Chargers get a good return. They get even if it was a fair catch, they would have had good field position, but Roberts returns it a little bit. They start on the Eagles' 38-yard line, and they score a touchdown in this drive. This is the drive where you expect a touchdown. Yeah, you're starting on the opponent's 38-yard line. You need to score a touchdown, and they do. They get the touchdown. 6 plays. They're up 7-0. So pretty good start, I guess. They had a really impressive first drive that didn't end up in points. Two good defensive stands. The Eagles' first two possessions were both punts. Eagles have like 30 total yards. And Chargers scored a touchdown on their second drive. So yeah, after two drives for both teams, Chargers are up 7-0. Eagles get their third drive, and they move the ball pretty well against the Chargers in their third drive. It wasn't necessarily anything impressive. They didn't dominate the Chargers. They were just running the ball, moving the ball, 6-7 yard plays here and there. And yeah, they moved it 10 yards, 75-yard touchdown to tie it up 7-7. And then the Chargers have another good drive on their third offensive drive. However, it stalls and they go for it again on 4th and 2 from the Eagles' 27-yard line. Again, you can argue, like, why not kick it? What's that, a 45-yard field goal? Your kicker should be able to make 45-yard field goals. If you have no confidence that your kicker can't make that, then you need to find a new kicker, which the Chargers did, by the way, later in the season. Actually, I think they had Hopkins at this point. I think they got rid of Vizcaino, who was missing extra points and field goals like nothing. And I think they had Hopkins at this point. But they went for it. Again, it's 2 yards. You're going to pick that up maybe 80% of the time on the plays that you run. But they didn't. They sacrificed the 3 points. Turnover on downs. This drive was okay. There was a lot of conservative dink and dunk passing. This whole game, there was a lot of that. I think it was like the second lowest ADOT for Herbert of the year. And yeah, I just thought it wasn't a very good drive. So then Eagles get the ball back, and they do kind of the same thing they did their last drive. They they had a 16-play, 7-minute drive, basically took the rest of the second quarter away, and they just moved the ball slowly down the field, 16 plays, 68 yards, and they only get a field goal. So it was nice for the Chargers to force a field goal after a 16-play drive. Usually, if you have 16 plays in a 7-minute drive, probably means you're going to get a touchdown, but hold them to a field goal. Eagles go up 10-7, and then Chargers, they have one play in the half. So both teams had four drives in the first half. Chargers get one touchdown. They go turnover on downs, touchdown, turnover on downs, and then into the half. And Eagles are punt, touchdown, field goal. Okay, so first half I think the offense moved the ball well. Obviously they only had 3 drives, right? Really, and they moved the ball on all of them. But unfortunately, they only came up with 7 points. It's just gonna happen sometimes, and you have to see if you can kind of overcome it. And then they do in this game, obviously. So defense played well. I wouldn't say well. They played okay. They were being moved on. The Eagles were moving the ball on them quite well in the last 2 drives, but I thought they played decently, And I'd like to see the offense just kind of push the ball down the field more. Again, I'm all for that with the type of quarterback and offensive weapons that we have. But second half starts, and Chargers get the ball, and again they move the ball down the field. So this is technically their 5th drive. Like I said, one of their drives was a 1-play end of half drive. So basically, all 4 of their drives, they've moved the ball. All 4 of their real drives. This drive, they actually threw the ball down the field a little bit more, and they got a field goal. 9 plays, 57 yards. They get a field goal. It feels like a field goal kind of game. It's 10-10 at this point, and we're 10 minutes left in the third quarter. It just feels like a field goal type of game. Eagles' opening drive of the second half is a good stand, really, really great stand by the Chargers. They shut them down, minus 1 yard, net yards, 3 plays, 3 and out punt. The Chargers have 4 possessions in the second half, and they score in all 4. We already talked about the field goal, and then they get a 4-play, 66-yard drive touchdown. They have a big play to Williams, and then they get a Parham touchdown, mix the extra point, so the Chargers are up 16-10 at this point. And it basically just comes down to, the Eagles' last 2 drives, they get touchdowns. 10-play, 85 yards, 10 plays, 78 yards. Eagles kind of move the ball with ease, and they're scoring touchdowns. So it's basically coming down to who's going to get the ball last, it seems like. So after the Chargers scored the touchdown to go up 16-10, like I said, Eagles scored their touchdown to go up 17-6, I believe. 17-6. And then Chargers get the ball back, and they have their 3rd straight great offensive drive of 10 plays, 61 yards, and they take over 6.5 minutes off the clock. A lot of short passes and runs, but it worked, sometimes you're going to have drives like that. It worked. Chargers, one thing to note, they had another sneak by Herbert. I believe that's the fourth sneak by Herbert so far this year, and it's 4 for 4. So something to keep an eye on for later in the season. Chargers score a touchdown, go for 2. They're up 24-17. Eagles get the ball back. They have their own big drive of 10 plays, 78 yards, 5.5 minutes off clock. And they score a touchdown to tie it up, 24. And then probably one of my favorite drives of the year is Chargers get the ball with about 6 minutes left in the game, in the fourth quarter. And they just have a drive that takes up literally the whole 6 minutes. 15-play drive, 64 yards, and they kick a game-winning field goal. They do go for it on 4th and 1 from the Eagles' 41-yard line. Again, being aggressive and basically saying, hey, we need to get 1 yard. If we can't get 1 yard, we don't deserve to win. Can't kick a field goal from there. It's too far. It's 59-yard field goal. Way too far to kick. So they go for it. They get it. My opinion on this is when you're playing these types of games against good teams, and again, the Eagles have, setting up the situation, Eagles have moved the ball quite well against the Chargers, especially the last 2 drives. They've scored back-to-back touchdowns where they've gone almost 80 yards on both. So my opinion in these situations is when like a game's tied or you make a decision to kick a field goal to go up by 2 points, let's say, or 1 point, and there's time left. And at this point, there would have been a decent amount of time left for the Eagles. My opinion is that you have to play and assume the other team's going to be able to get into field goal range, because it just seems to happen all the time. So in my opinion, even if they punt and even if they pin the Eagles, maybe if they pin the Eagles within the 5, they don't, but you have to punt it pretty well to pin them, and most likely the Eagles, it's a touchback and the Eagles get the ball at the 20. I think they go down the field and kick a game-winning field. So I think the Chargers' decision to go for it on 4th and 1, not play conservative. Again, they're playing it assuming the Eagles would be able to that field goal. And again, looking at what the Eagles, not just their last 2 drives, but 4 of their last 5 drives, they've moved the ball on the Chargers. They went 10 plays, 75-yard touchdown, 16 plays, 68 yards field goal, 3 plays, -1 yard punt, and then 10 plays, 85-yard touchdown, 10 plays, 78-yard touchdown. That's 4 of their last 5 drives. So more than likely they're going to move the ball. So good call by Staley, I think. Another good call by Staley, going for it on 4th down. Chargers end up holding the ball for 6 minutes, kick a game-winning field goal. So something I think we're not used to. We saw it in the Washington game where they were aggressive and they held the ball for like the last 7 minutes of the fourth quarter to ice the game. And then this game, they held the ball for the last 6 minutes, kick a game-winning field goal. Chargers, again, one of my favorite games of the year last year, because it was just such a necessary win. Being 5-3 versus 4-4 after losing 2 in a row. This would have been your 3rd loss in a row. It could have crumbled the whole season. So Chargers win, and that wraps up their second quarter of the year. The second quarter of the season, and they go 2-2. So at this point, again, they're 5-3. I believe they're still in first place. They are tied record-wise with the Raiders, but they have the head-to-head win over the Raiders. So, even that bump in the road against the Ravens and Patriots back-to-back losses, they still find themselves in first place. Overall, it was just a weird second quarter. It just, again, started off with that Browns win, just feeling like, man, the Chargers are the team to beat in the AFC. And then they get demolished by the Ravens, and then beat after the bye by the Patriots. Nice bounce back win against the Eagles. To kind of bookend the second quarter with wins. 5-3 after their first 8 games, first place in the division. Offense just seems inconsistent. If we look at that Eagles game, they had this, like I said, the second lowest ADOT of the year, and their offense wasn't that good. It was really good in the second half, and it was they were kind of playing a possession, control the ball offense, which actually ended up working. No pressure given up by the offensive line that game, but Their offense seemed inconsistent. I think at this point, halfway through the season, we know what the defense is. They're not going to win games, but they're going to keep you in games so that you can win, right? They're not going to shut down teams, and not many defenses do now in football in 2021. We know what the defense is. We've seen them at their worst against the Browns. Chargers were still able to win, but they make plays. They keep you in games. Some games they get turnovers, and so we know what the defense is. Offense needs to be more consistent. I think their 3 best offensive games so far throughout their first 8 was the Washington game, the Cleveland game, and the Philly game. 2 of those 3, Herbert had an above average ADOT, okay? Higher than his season average. That was the Washington and the Cleveland game. The Philly game was an exception, okay? So I just think pushing the ball down the field, which they do a lot more in the second half of the year, is the key to like a successful offense. Herbert's ADOT in this quarter was 7.8, which is very similar to the first quarter. He was 22nd out of 36 qualifying quarterbacks in ADOT. And again, it's just if you have such a big quarterback with such a big arm, he shouldn't be 22nd out of 36, the 22nd lowest in terms of pushing the ball down the field. Mike Williams' ADOT was up from 10.3 in the first quarter to 15.1 in the second quarter, and which is top 15 in the league. And his second quarter was much better than his first quarter, stats-wise, so I think there's some correlation there. Keenan Allen's was down, but again, Keenan Allen's going to be right around 9. His ADOT, average depth of target, is going to be, right around 8 or 9 for the entire year. So, that's kind of my thoughts on the Chargers' second quarter of the 2021 season. So next episode, I'll start off with some news if there is some news, and then we'll get into the third quarter of the season, and hopefully by the end of next week we'll have the fourth quarter, we'll have the entire season reviewed, and we can start getting into free agency stuff, which is coming up in like about a week or so. I think the legal tampering period is coming up on Monday, March March like 14th or something, 14th, 15th. So we're going to start getting into free agency and draft stuff. So thank you guys so much again for listening. I enjoy doing this, and I'd love to hear from you guys and your comments or concerns or critiques or whatever you'd like. And I look forward to talking to you guys next week, and let's go Bolts.